Welcome back, everyone. Let's dive right in. When we look up and see a massive jet cruising at 30,000 feet, it's incredibly tempting to think of the airplane as the stroke of a single, lone genius. We kind of imagine someone just waking up one day and inventing flight from scratch. But the reality? It's actually far more mind-bending. The Wright brothers didn't just invent flight out of thin air. What they did was snap the final pieces of a 5,500-year-old puzzle right into place. Every single component of a modern jet owes its existence to thousands of years of earlier discoveries. It's the ultimate culmination of a shared chain of human knowledge. So, let's look at exactly how we got here.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to trace this evolutionary chain of human transport through 6 key eras: muscle to the wheel, mastering wind and waves, the scientific foundation, the age of engines, the birth of powered flight, and finally, the secret of progress.
Starting right off with Section 1, muscle to the wheel. For the vast majority of human history, we're talking before around 3000 BCE, travel was strictly bound by our own biological limits. If you wanted to move something, well, you had to physically carry it. But then, about 5,500 years ago, a massive paradigm shift occurred. We domesticated horses, and suddenly, we essentially shrank the world. We had access to biological power way greater than our own. And right on the heels of that, around 3500 BCE, came the invention of the wheel. By combining horsepower with carts and chariots, we instantly multiplied both the weight we could carry and the distance we could travel. We were finally building real infrastructure for land transport. And, as those roads and engineering skills improved, humanity started looking beyond the shoreline.
Which brings us to Section 2, mastering wind and waves. To actually leave the land behind, we couldn't just rely on muscles anymore. Instead, wind-powered sailing ships became the new engines of human progress. By capturing the wind in sails and figuring out the behavior of the waves, we unlocked long-distance trade and global exploration. But here's the thing, crossing a vast, featureless ocean safely, that required a lot more than just sewing some heavy cloth together to catch a breeze.
Physical engineering alone wasn't going to keep you alive on the open ocean. The true hidden enablers of the sailing era were actually astronomy and mathematics. To figure out where you were in the middle of nowhere, you literally had to look up at the stars and calculate your position using increasingly complex math. This is a vital link in our chain. We were finally starting to use math not just to count things, but to actively navigate and predict our physical relationship with the planet.
Next up, Section 3, the scientific foundation.
So that early math used by sailors eventually evolved into a monumental structural leap during the scientific revolution. Thinkers like Galileo and Isaac Newton, they essentially provided the cheat codes to the universe. They didn't invent machines themselves. Rather, they mathematically defined the invisible rules of gravity, motion, and mechanics that govern those machines. Before Newton, building complex structures was honestly mostly trial and error. But after Newton, we had a mathematical blueprint. We moved from just guessing to calculating exactly how much force was needed to move an object. And this scientific foundation is what made all future safe, calculated engineering absolutely possible.
Moving right along to Section 4, the age of engines. Armed with this incredible new scientific understanding, humanity just accelerated into the Industrial Revolution. This was a world of precision manufacturing, where we permanently replaced animal power with machine power. Now, steam engines completely changed the game, powering massive trains and heavy ships. But because of their massive boilers and super heavy coal requirements, that power-to-weight ratio made flight completely impossible. The absolute game-changer finally arrived in the late 1800s, the internal combustion engine. These vastly smaller gasoline and diesel engines were a total revelation in lightweight, high-output power. It was the exact missing puzzle piece we needed to finally drag a heavier-than-air machine into the sky.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, the birth of powered flight. Now, people had dreamed of flying for centuries, right? Studying birds, experimenting with gliders to learn the physics of lift, drag, and thrust. But raw engine power and wings still weren't enough. If you just strap a huge motor to a glider, it's going to crash. Engineers had to figure out how to actually tame a three-dimensional fluid, the air. So, the mastery of flight control surfaces, specifically ailerons, elevators, and rudders, was the critical breakthrough needed to actively maneuver and stabilize an aircraft in the sky.
And all of these historical elements finally collided in one pivotal year, 1903. This is the moment the Wright brothers fundamentally changed the trajectory of human history, achieving the world's first powered, controlled, and sustained flight.
The Wright Flyer's blueprint really is the ultimate synthesis of our entire timeline. How did they do it? Well, they combined the age of engines' lightweight internal combustion power with highly efficient propellers, those 3D control surfaces we just talked about, and, perhaps most importantly, they relied entirely on the physics and math laid down by Newton centuries earlier. The Wright brothers were absolutely brilliant, no doubt, but their success was a direct, undeniable combination of the specific components that previous generations had laboriously built up. Once that final link in the chain was complete, aviation evolved with staggering speed. We went from these fragile, wooden biplanes to sleek, metal monoplanes and revolutionary jet engines by the 1930s and 40s. Just think about the sheer speed of this evolution for a second. Humanity went from a 12-second hop over the sand in Kitty Hawk to physically landing a human on the moon in just 66 years. That is less than a single human lifetime. Today, our aircraft are marvels of advanced composites, computers, and GPS, crossing oceans at the literal speed of sound.
And finally, Section 6, the secret of progress.
So, how exactly did human transport accelerate so wildly? It's not like humans suddenly got smarter in 1903. Progress exploded because we essentially upgraded our societal operating system. We developed the ability to record knowledge through writing, which put an end to reinventing the wheel every single generation. We shared discoveries across continents, used mathematics to predict outcomes before we even started building, systematically applied the scientific method, and used early machines to build increasingly precise tools. Without this accumulated operating system, the Wright brothers would have been starting from absolute scratch, and they literally never would have left the ground.
It really is a strict, undeniable chain of cause and effect. Think about it. Without ancient metallurgy, we couldn't forge the strong metals needed for the Industrial Revolution. Without those metals, there'd be no internal combustion engines. Without lightweight engines, no airplanes. And without centuries of mathematics and physics, those airplanes could never be designed to fly safely. We absolutely did not go from horses to airplanes in one miraculous leap. We went from horses to wheels to ships to steam to automobiles and then to flight. Every single invention depended entirely on countless earlier discoveries.
Which leaves us with this final, truly fascinating question to ponder. If thousands of years of shared, compounding knowledge managed to take us from walking barefoot in the dirt to flying metal machines above the clouds, where on Earth will the next 1,000 years take us? The trajectory of human innovation is absolutely boundless, and it relies on all of us to keep adding our own small links to the chain. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.